Welcome to another episode of Building the Board presented by Hyper Ice. I'm Britt Johnson here with Kyle Yeomans. Now, Kyle, the Dallas Cowboys have spent the last couple years building their defensive line in day 2 of 3 of the draft, like Neville Gallimore, we've got Osa Odighizuwa, Quinton Bohanna. Is this a trend you see continuing this year?
You know, it's interesting because they have spent a lot of high-quality picks, and even before the names you mentioned, Tristan Hill back in 2019 was your first pick because you didn't have a first-round pick. You traded it for Amari Cooper. They haven't been shy about using high draft picks to shore up the interior of that defensive line. I'm not so sure they're going to do that again this year. Yes, they can probably stand to upgrade the spot, and there are some guys at the top of the draft. Jordan Davis out of Georgia is one of those names, and then you've got Perryon Winfrey out of Oklahoma. David Hellman's going to break him down coming up in just a little bit. There are names up there. It's not necessarily a high priority for the Cowboys, and I don't necessarily think it's a deep class as well. If you were to put money on it, or if I were a betting man and I'd put money on it, I'd say the Cowboys actually don't come out of this draft with an interior defensive lineman for the first time in, like you said, multiple years.
Well, maybe let's stop wasting too much time and just move over to Dave, because I like to say this is Ohio State red. Dave might say this is Oklahoma Sooner red because of the guy he is about to bring up, Perryon Winfrey. Dave?
How dare you, Kyle? How dare you tell me I can't spend another top 100 pick on a defensive tackle? It worked pretty well with the last OU guy they drafted, Neville Gallimore, a couple years ago in 2020. Perryon Winfrey could be better, in all honesty. 6'4", 290 pounds, 5.5 sacks, despite playing a lot of 0-and-1 technique for the Sooners last year. Let us get to the very impressive tape. You'll see my guy here lined up over the guard, wearing number 8. Perryon, I'm really sorry, buddy. I don't think they're going to let you wear 8 in Dallas. You can wear whatever else you want if you can penetrate like this. My guy gets into the backfield. Here you see him forcing a fumble for a touchdown in a crazy Bedlam game last year. Violence. I'm stealing that line from our producer, but just look at the way he bullies the guard into the backfield. You see it consistently. By the way, you saw it against the best of the best at the Senior Bowl. 1 Senior Bowl MVP as a defensive tackle, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. Not bad. Not a sack here, but again, you just see the violence that my guy plays with. Scrum, getting off a block. Not a crazy play, but the way you're able to get to a run, going away from you after bouncing through the trash, scraping off of blocks. Again, I just like the quickness that he gets to the ball with. But again, this isn't why I'm drafting him in the 2nd round if I get that lucky. Okay, this I love. 0 technique, lined up over the center, just across town in Fort Worth. I'm so short I have to reach across the screen. Blows the whole play up immediately. He's in the backfield in the blink of an eye. Again, to have a guy that can play 0-and-1 technique and penetrate as if he's a 3 technique, talk about value. Again, I know they've drafted a lot of defensive tackles. I know Tristan Hill's still here. Gallimore's still a young player. They just got Osa. Chauncey Golston can do a bit of that as well. If he's there, I would draft him. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, the reason why he is so good at doing other things besides that 0 technique is because he started out at a junior college before going to Oklahoma. There and in high school, he played 3 technique. He played defensive end there. Is that something you guys can see him playing in the NFL, or do you think it's more going to be 0 technique with the Dallas Cowboys?
I think he'll probably fit in the middle, maybe a little 1 technique. He could possibly slide over to the 3. I think he translates best as a 3 technique because he does have some quickness. Dave showed it a little bit there throughout that whole presentation. And you mentioned the Senior Bowl. His Senior Bowl highlights, much like some of his highlights on tape, were as good as anybody I've ever seen at the defensive tackle spot. He flashes and he brings some pass rush. He brings that blow-up mentality in the middle of a defense. It's the inconsistencies. He disappears for 3 plays, and then he flashes for 1 play. He comes back and goes wishy-washy every once in a while, gets blown off the line of scrimmage. Oh, and then he'll blow up the line of scrimmage. If he can hone that in and he can kind of find a rhythm and bring some consistency to the NFL, it doesn't matter if he's a 1 technique or a 3 technique. He's going to be a really good player, and defenses are going to really enjoy having him on the roster.
The fun thing for me, I'm thinking back, some of these guys were drafted by the previous regime.
Yeah.
It was very static. It was very, you're a 3, you're a 1, you're an end. With Dan Quinn running the defense, I worry about that a lot less. Like, yes, Perryon Winfrey plays defensive tackle. He could play any defensive tackle position, in my humble opinion. If he can play nose, he can play the rest of them. And on top of that, Dan Quinn's not afraid to put the best and, in my opinion, most fun personnel on the field. Perryon Winfrey could be part of a NASCAR package. Third downs, maybe you kick DeMarcus Lawrence inside with him. I think you could have some fun. I think he's big enough and athletic enough to do a variety of things aside from the traditional defensive tackles.
There were murmurs throughout Senior Bowl week of dominance that through the practices, and then you mentioned what he did in the game, winning the MVP award. There were murmurs that he was being compared to Aaron Donald, not as a player, but just as the dominance that he showed and the highlights and the flash that he showed throughout the week in Mobile. Anytime you're in the same mention, the same sentence, you're doing something right.
You are doing a lot right.
Yes. So, okay, I know I flashed past everybody else because I really like Perryon Winfrey, and I think he could possibly end up here, but let's go back to these day 2, day 3 guys. Any guys that you guys are interested in looking at?
I think there's a couple names on the board, and one of them is on the board, or a couple of them are on the board behind me. Logan Hall from Belton, Texas. He went to Houston. One of those tweener guys that if you wanted an edge rusher, he could be an edge rusher. If you wanted to throw him in a 3 technique, which the Cowboys have looked at him, they met with him at the Combine, he could be that 3 technique because he does have that much girth, but he also has the speed and bendiness to get to the edge. He may be one of those guys day 2 that you could look at, but a lot of teams are pushing him further and further up the draft boards as well. Another one, if you really wanted a big, meaty run stuffer, Travis Jones out of UConn. Smaller school guy, made the transfer back and forth and ended up at UConn. He's a guy that could really plug the middle of that defense and provide some run stuffing ability to go along with the Osa Digizuas and the Neville Gallimores and Tristan Hills that are already on the roster. He'd be the one to put at the 1 technique right next to him. And it could be a lot of fun if those guys are all in that rotation together.
I think we'd probably be remiss if we didn't mention Texas A&M's DeMarvin Leal as well.
Absolutely.
A guy the Cowboys have had a lot of interest in. Having given you grief a minute ago, though, I'm kind of with you. How many years in a row do you use premium assets at the same position? And we'll see how well they all pan out. It's a little early on Osa Odigizua. Neville Gallimore obviously had his second season derailed by injury a little bit. Part of me thinks maybe you give those picks a chance to breathe, though. Like, I think I would be surprised to see a top 100 pick spent at D-tackle. But if it's Winfrey, I'm not going to. That's all I'm saying.
If it's Winfrey, we're having a lot of fun. We're high-fiving, and then we'll make it work. And Dan Quinn could certainly do so. But I'm right there with you. Allow Neville Gallimore, who had a season shortened with injury, got hurt in that Cardinals preseason game number 2 of the year, and then he didn't play until
December.
All the way through, all the way to December. Allow him to have another full season. We were expecting him to see that jump as the 3 technique, as somebody who could certainly come in and provide meaningful minutes in the middle of that defense. And then for Osa Odigizua, top 100 pick again, flashed at times when he came and filled in. Carlos Watkins is coming back as well. Multiple guys in that rotation that you feel good about. I don't necessarily think you have to spend a day 1, day 2, but like you've said in many other cases, if there's a day 3 guy you like, go pick the player. Go pick your best player available.
Once the 4th round starts, it's all gravy. Whatever.
All is on the board.
Well, I would like to say it's been great throughout the series of this show. We've all been pretty excited about defense. Like, we're not too worried about the defensive side of the ball, and I like that energy.
Isn't that strange?
Yes, I love it.
It's a welcome change around here.
Is it welcome?
Yes.
Also stressful at the same time.
I mean, look,
I don't want to worry about the offense either here.
We're always going to find something to be worried about, but I've spent a lot of time wondering how they're going to fix this defense. You can always get better, don't get me wrong, but this is the most satisfied I've ever felt about the defense in an offseason.
Feels good. Feels good. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Building the Board. Britt Johnson, Kyle Yeomans, Dave Hellman. We'll see you guys next time.